This is the Queen of Politics edition of The Aaron Cruz Show, the political weekly wrap-up that packs a punch with your host, Aaron Cruz.
Good evening and welcome to the Aaron Cruz Show, coming to you from Palm Springs, California. This is the Queen of Politics. I am your hostess, Aaron Cruz. Thank you for joining me. Tonight's topic is about corruptocrats. All right? Congress. They are unbelievable. I know I've talked about the constipated Congress before, and I kind of laugh when I talk about it, but now we're not constipated. It's like we have the runs. We got all of these pieces of legislation going around everywhere. I mean, it's just like a constant. And I really want to get down to kind of the nitty-gritty because I have seen so much stuff out there right now, and people just the general public doesn't really know what's going on. And I've read article after article after article where it's really unclear, this bill, that bill, what really passed. Did Obamacare pass? Didn't it pass? Did they repeal it? No, they didn't repeal it. What's going on? And I know I've talked about this before in Political Core. I talked about it on Tuesday, and I kind of got down to the procedural section and walked through what was going to be next after the Congress went ahead and voted on whether or not to argue this, kind of hash it out on the Senate floor, and if they passed the ability to do so, and then what was going to happen next. So I want to touch on that tonight because when I'm reading these articles, another way to describe it would be it's bipolar. I mean, you see something one way and you see something the other. You see the left saying this, you see the right saying that, liberals are saying this, conservatives are saying that, and it's all kind of twisted. And really what I think it gets down to is that the general public, the reaction is just shock and awe no matter what side you're on. If you're rooting for something, whatever it was, doesn't matter which side or what way. I mean, people just don't know what to think. So I really got to get into this, and I want to let you know that I'm not without the ability to explain kind of in layman's terms what's happened, what's going on, what's going to be happening next, because we've just got to iron out the record. The other thing we're going to talk about is the minibus, and then we're also going to talk about trans. Yes, we are. We're going to talk about trans, and it's going to be very, very quick, so you better stay with it. But as we talk about Obamacare, basically, people don't have any clue what's going on. They're reading the top cover of whatever article that came up, and they're not really understanding because none of these articles, I've looked at probably 100 articles, and none of them are really clear, depending on who wrote it, what perspective it is, what actually has been happening. And from the right, what I've been seeing is there's so many people upset, especially conservatives, fiscal conservatives, who want full repeal, and probably no replace, or who wanted repeal and replace later. They're just like, our bill didn't pass. Okay, look, I really want to set the record straight. The other day, the best thing that could have happened, okay, and I'm so glad it happened. A lot of people aren't. Liberals and progressives are not happy about it, but the Senate passed a bill which allowed the ability for them to hash this thing out, okay, to bring it to debate, the AHCA or the BCRA, whatever you want to, whatever piece of legislation, it's the AHCA, but whatever piece of legislation you want to talk about, it doesn't matter really what it is because they're going to morph it. Okay, we'll get into that in a second. I mean, they're just going to completely blow your mind with amendment after amendment, which is what they're doing right now. But what they did was they allowed for the ability, they voted to allow the ability for this thing to be hashed out. That's what that was. Now, when we look at the repeal and replace, the amendment that said it was for full repeal pretty much, and that did not pass. People are beside themselves. Conservatives, many conservatives, fiscal conservatives, libertarians are beside themselves, okay, because they wanted repeal. Well, most people don't understand that's not a separate bill. That's an amendment, okay? Right now, what the Senate is doing is they're voting on all these little tiny amendments, okay, that's going to tweak that legislation, all right? So what I'm going to say to you is this. You have to stay on your Senate, people. You have to stay on your Senate, and you have to really look at this, and you have to call your representative and ask them, not your representative, you have to call your Senate leader and ask their office, look, what amendments are they going to support? What amendments to this legislation are they going to support? I want to know where they stand. You have to ask, because right now it's time to turn up that heat, because they're going to morph this bill until we can't even recognize it. That's what's going on right now, people. All right? And so what looked like your cute little sister the other day, or at least maybe a little bit of, it's going to look like a complete monster from, you're not going to be able to recognize. It's going to be a complete distortion. So I like this one article, okay? It's the LA Times, and it came out, I believe, the 27th at 5:05 p.m., and it's really interesting because they talk about where everybody stood. I'll post a link to it. They talk about kind of where everybody stood on things, and who wants a conference? Who doesn't? The people want a conference. People want the House and the Senate to work together and come up with some, all this stuff, and they want the Senate to. It's just this back and forth. But what I have to say is that our senators right now look like little crazy men. They do. They look like crazy men. They aren't rational. Some of them are just giving talking points, it almost looks like. We have Bob Corker, Tennessee, Republican of Tennessee. Quote, people want to be assured there's going to be a conference. Then we have House Speaker. He basically promised to do it. Quote, if moving forward requires a conference committee, if that is something the House is willing to do. Okay? And that was Paul Ryan. So, and then we've got people who are saying, if it's a skinny repeal or nothing, I'm going to vote for it. That was Collins, all right, Rep. Collins. And that was, that's a representative. But you have people from the House and the Senate, and they're going all different ways on what the Senate's going to be doing in terms of this health care legislation. What we see here, what we're seeing, this chaos right now, first of all, it's all a distraction, in my opinion, all right? We have to be focused. We have to be a united front. We have to say, look, this is what we want. This is what we don't want. You need to tell your Senate reps very clear and concise today, now. And you have to find out where they stand on things, and then that way you can write them, I know it's late for writing a letter, but you can write them something in case something passes and pressure that they go back in and they make some additional changes. This is going to be a process, folks. This isn't done the other day when they voted on that piece of legislation. This is going to be a process. It's going to take a lot of work. We see the confusion and the chaos as we speak. And we have everybody from AARP and all of these other big organizations blurping in why they hate this and why they hate that. It's a skinny plan because there's this new little skinny plan. And now it's not a skinny plan. It's an amendment. Okay? Remember, all these little bills that they're voting on, they're all amendments. And I think that these news outlets need to start using those words. Amendments. It's not a skinny bill. They're misleading the American public. Even senators, I think they have to be very clear, and even House representatives. Congress has to start using words that are consistent, that align with what the general public understands in terms of they're busy. They don't have time to, figure out which news networks are telling them truths and lies. Okay, but if we start using things like skinny bill, skinny bill, skinny repeal, all of these sorts of things, it's misleading, all right, and it's inflammatory, and the reason is this is because then you have people like Senator John Kennedy, he's a Republican. He says, quote, I don't know if the end is going to be a fat or skinny or anorexic or bulimic. Okay, this is not productive. And I don't care if he is a Republican, all right? We have to have senators and we have to have representatives. Congress really needs to get on the page of giving the American people the information they need. The news is going to spout whatever they say out of their mouths. And they know that. And we have to have these senators start saying what they mean and mean what they say. You know, it's a lot of hot air to run on a repeal and replace and then come up and start, you know, hashing out these amendments that may not even benefit the bill or benefit the American people. Okay? And this is what Trump had to say about it. You know, this is the thing. You may or may not like Trump. What I like about Trump is that he says it how it is. And he just says it plain. You know, you don't have to get all complicated. He says, quote, "Come on, Republican senators, you can do it on health care. After 7 years, this is your chance to shine. Don't let the American people down." That's what he tweeted this morning. Okay, he doesn't want America to suffer. He's trying to get them to come together in unity, trying to get them to come together and pass a bill that's going to be equitable, that will provide the care, you know, provide a basis for insurers to meet regulations, to provide quality care, and have premiums drop so that way costs become more affordable all the way around, not just the insurance costs, but actual medical care costs. And I think that's an important thing to recognize, is that just call things what they are. Okay? And so that's what I like about him. And then we have people like the Democrat, Claire McCaskill, and she's like, it's like we're in the twilight zone of legislating. Well, yes, we are. Because of people like you, Senator Claire McCaskill, we are in the twilight zone of legislating. Because Democrats won't get off their arse and come together and say, you know, premiums are high. Healthcare costs are rising. You know, we need to do something about this. What can we do to make good legislation without losing the types of reforms that we want insurance companies to have to meet up to? Okay? I mean, they're just not coming across the aisle. They aren't. And we haven't seen them come across the aisle except for in a little bit of lip service for 7 years. We've seen them throwing fits, sitting on the floor of our legislating areas. We've seen them throwing their mouths around, throwing loose words, and they wonder why we are in the twilight zone of legislating. Because they aren't working in the best interest of the American people. They're not sticking to conservative policy. Conservative policy would be decisions that are slow and steady and traditional, I would say, leaning more traditional and not progressive and quick. Because, you know, what they did was they shoved a bill down our throat, which nobody knew what was going to happen. Even Pelosi said that. You have to pass the bill to know what's in it. Well, now we know what's in it. And now we know how much it costs. And now we know it's hurting the American people. So let's roll it back and say, you know what? Ooh, that was not a good idea. We need to go a bit slower into this revamping and government taking control over a huge portion of our economy and repeal and replace with something that's more reasonable in terms of providing infrastructure for insurers to meet up to in terms of, what they should be doing to make sure that they're responsible. And I get that, but not at the cost of raising all of our premiums and then, you know, government making mandates, forcing the American public to buy the ones that can afford it, to buy plans that are going to bleed their tables dry and they can't feed their kids. I mean, and then all of the costs go up because of, you know, redistribution of wealth and what have you. So we have to be smart about this, you know, and the Democrats, what I'm seeing is that, you know, it's just, they're inflating the anger amongst the citizenry instead of saying, you know what, nobody died really from this before. Nobody's died from this since. Let's figure out something to make this work. No, they're inflating and using the heartstrings of American citizens and fear in the minds of man and hearts of man to get what they want, and it's just so wrong. So what's next is that they're voting on these amendments, and then what it'll do is it's basically going to go through a process, and I'll give you all that written because I need you to read this for yourself. I need you to sit down for 2 minutes. Just 2 minutes is all it takes. And read this for yourself. And then you'll know what's next. And then when you read the articles, then you'll really understand, hey, but this is twisted. And you'll be able to recognize when they twist things in these articles because you'll understand the process and you'll understand what they're referring to. So I'm going to provide that to you. You're going to have to read what's next. They're going to do these amendments, and then they're going to basically yell it out on the floor, and everybody's going to have crybaby session and how this is going to hurt so-and-so and all those stories, emotional stories and everything like that. But what's important is to stay focused. Again, this last time I'm going to mention it, call your senators, find out where they stand on each one of these healthcare amendments, and tell them what you want. It's your responsibility, and it's their obligation. They were voted in. It's their obligation to listen to their constituency. So tell them what you want. I mean, you can't make them choose that way, but, if enough of their constituency pressures them and says, hey, this is what we want, they're going to listen. They're going to know that they'll be voted out next term if they don't. And especially if they're one who ran on repeal and replace or repeal. Okay? So make sure I'll give you the phone number at the end of the show, and you can go ahead and you can give them a piece of your mind in a polite and constructive way. Remember, you get more places with honey. Yeah? Be nice and sweet. So as we go through, I'm also going to provide you an article. I am not really one for the New York Times, but they have a nice little chart here. You can't really read the lip service because the lip service is completely, in my mind, distorted. They talk about the votorama, which is also in that little clear-cut description of what's going to go on. They talk about the skinny repeal amendment. They actually use the word amendment. I was quite pleased. I don't really care for the New York Times. This is the second time I'm going to say that. But that's just, they're at least using the words that are appropriate for the action. Skinny repeal amendment. That would repeal the mandates that most individuals have health insurance and that large employers cover their employees. So, they do mention some things that are useful and information. I just wouldn't lean on it too heavily. I'll give you the other resource, which will give you the actual data that you need. And so there are going to be 3 pieces in my notes for you tonight. Okay, so you're going to find that really interesting because you can see who voted how without going to the Open Congress. .org, which, by the way, you can always go there. There are resources on my website, erincruz.com, where you can go ahead and you can click there, and you're going to be able to see opencongress.org. If you ever forget what some of your resources are, you can just go to my website and you can click on resources and find it. And there you go, and you can look up whatever bill you want on there. But this is a kind of more concentrated way to visualize it, and then unfortunately, on this particular thing, unlike Open Congress, you can't go to your senator's website right from there. But it is a good visual vote on who said yes, who said no, who said what on what. It almost looks like kind of, I don't know. You're going to have to look at it for yourself. They have repeal and replace, partial repeal, and skinny repeal, and how everybody voted. Of course, nobody's voted on the skinny repeal yet. It's still being hashed out. So you need to call your senators on that. So now the other thing I wanted to talk about, is the minibus. So I know I talked about the $1.6 billion border wall section of the minibus, but there was something interesting that I didn't know about that is in this kind of HR 3219 on Heritage Action for America. I'm using them as a resource on this. I use them often. Basically, this is a security minibus which provides for 2018 Defense, Military, Construction, and Veteran Affairs, Energy, and Water and Legislative Branch. Now, this drives me crazy. On what craziness does Defense, Military, Construction, Veteran Affairs have anything to do with Energy, Water, and Legislative? I mean, I guess legislative, but energy and water? I guess energy may relate to defense and military, okay. I guess energy, water, and legislative branch is that new branch that was funded. I could be wrong, but that's what I vaguely recall. Anyway, Heritage kind of weighs into this, and they say that they intend to key vote against it, at least one of the amendments. Castor 38, Norcross 39, Quigley 40, Polis 41, Perry 43, Esty 44, and Larson 45. Basically, that increased funding for the Department of Energy's Office of Energy Efficiency and Renewable Energy. Good gosh, we're still funding all that. I mean, green energy, it's just pseudoscience. So the quote is this from Heritage Action. All of this spending for activities that private sector should undertake if companies believe it's in their economic interest to do so. The reality is that the market of opportunity for clean energy investments already exists. Americans spend roughly $456 billion on gasoline in 2014. Both the electricity and the transportation fuel markets are multi-trillion-dollar markets. The global market for energy totals $6 trillion. There is a robust and consistent and growing demand for energy technology and services independent of any government efforts to subsidize it. And I think that, the whole point is that, I mean, that's the statement that they're saying that, I mean, why is government supporting renewable energy? The point is just, it's out of my mind. Now, one of the things that the key vote alert no on one of the amendments to mandate is Buy American requirement on Army Corps of Engineers number 60. Now, I'm going to tell you what. I've read this and I'm looking at it and I just think this is exactly, I want to get into this for a second because I'm going to read it. And this is exactly where I think people in Congress, people that lobbyists are completely missing the point. So it says the House will vote on an amendment offered by Democrat of Washington, Rep. Del Bean, I'm not sure how to pronounce it, to energy and water appropriations for fiscal year 2018, H.R. 329, or Security Minibus Division D. Similar to other Buy American policies, the amendment would impose misguided domestic content requirements on federal government acquisition. While the politics of Buy American its policies include costly mistakes that have been demonstrated to hurt American workers. As Tori Wine, research associate in the Center for Free Markets and Regulatory Reform at the Heritage Foundation, explains in a recent report, I'm going to provide you this article so that way you can click on it and find that report. The common trends have emerged since these policies were first implemented in the World War II era. And this is a quote, domestic content requirements like those found in the Buy American Act, the Berry Amendment, and various other laws which result in additional regulatory burdens for producers and increased costs for American taxpayers, all for little or no gain. The policies are unlikely to stimulate job growth and target industries. End quote. It continues on. In keeping with the liberal tradition of citing broad-based congressional intent that happens to match current agenda, the rep stated her attempts to more narrowly enforce general appropriations restriction already on the books, stating in part, quote, it is unacceptable that the Army Corps is continuing to ignore federal regulations and Congress' clear intent. I hope the Corps reconsiders its decision and complies with the law, because I will keep fighting for U.S. manufacturers and workers until they make the right choice. Now, the Heritage Foundation says that the special interest amendment would actually expand the reach of existing laws governing procurement of certain types of anchor chains. It would do so by mandating that the Army Corps of Engineers only use anchor chains manufactured in the U.S. and would potentially preclude waivers that normally prevent excess costs to taxpayers. It would limit supply choices and basically all of these different companies, blah, 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 blah. I mean, the whole point is they say that injecting protectionism, patriarchism, and cronyism into policy, especially in federal government procurement led by Army Corps of Engineers, is misguided. Okay, fine, it's misguided. I think the point is this. In World War II, Their focus is completely different than now. They're looking at an enemy. Okay, they're looking at a clear-blooded enemy. They didn't want materials outside of the U.S. They wanted our materials. They didn't trust the outside. They couldn't count that somebody wouldn't sabotage us. This is not the careful Congress that we see now. This woman, I believe, and I don't know her very well. I've only read a couple of things about her, but I really feel like maybe their Heritage Foundation's position on the fact, or Heritage Action's position on the fact that, you know, it's just a burdensome piece of legislation. I get that. I don't think her draw is to actually protect the United States or U.S. workers at all. I think it's to thicken red tape and to bog down the U.S. Now, this is the thing, is that the reason why I think that is because we can't go back and be simple and just say, hey, we're going to make this right, we're going to do this right, this is for America, this is for exceptionalism, this is to protect our nation, we need to do this well. You know, we're not going to trust outside workers because they might make something faulty that's going to hurt our military and hurt our people, and that's a war of itself, people. Okay, and that's happened. We've seen our helicopters, our planes fall out of the sky under Obama. No joke, and I don't think it's anything short of faulty things and sabotage. And I'll just say that very clear. And I have no proof, nor do I have any kind of intel or anything to substantiate it, but I'm going to tell you, it's a suspect, and I am a mom. I can smell a rat or a dead fish a mile away, okay? And that's what that is. And so when we look at this kind of policy that was done in World War II, it was really to protect us. It wasn't so we could write a book full of laws that's, 10 feet tall, and expect our workers to meet and our businesses to meet all these regulations that just cost us so much we can't even afford anything. No, we at that point were making things right, doing things well, and maybe working conditions weren't what they are today, but the fact of the matter is right now I think they're making these bills with the excuse of kind of this standard, and it's running up our costs. Now, to completely roll all that back and say we should be buying this stuff out of the country, heck no. No, no, no. I believe we need to make sure that our war manufacturing, that anything that has to do with our military is done here, done right, done well, and that we guard it with everything that we have, okay? We need to make sure, and it's not about protectionism, people. It's not. I mean, I'm going to have a lot of people saying I'm an alarmist. I'm not an alarmist at all. But when you're talking about war, you have a war of the minds going on right now, war of the words going on right now. You have disinformation, misinformation. I'm going to talk about that, and I have a book that's going to be coming out. I'm going to talk about that a little bit. And then after that, part 2 of the book is going to be on a lot of that, misinformation, disinformation, basically battle in the minds. And so when you have that, you have to know that there's a risk that we have people from outside within. I mean, look what Russia was now accused of doing. They say, really, maybe they didn't do what they said, what the Democrats are saying that they did. But the fact of the matter is this, is that if we're questioning it to that point, we have to be very careful who we have working in our factories, who are working on our warships, who are working in our military. And then that's, my sweeties, where I'm going to tie into trans. Okay? We're going to shift here. Right now you're listening to Erin Cruz Show. This is Erin Cruz and Queen of Politics. So we're going to talk about trans. Now, I worked in HR for years, and I worked in business, academia, and also I have background in business administration, and whatnot. So we're going to talk about trans a little bit and employee administration. Basically, equal opportunity is great, okay? Federal law. Many are talking about the fact that Trump has violated many federal laws by putting this kind of block on trans working in our military. But I have to explain something to you, and I'm not a HR attorney. I'm not an employment attorney, or anything like that. But on a very basic level, I'm going to explain to you that and kind of draw it out in a very plain way. If you went to go to apply for a job, okay, and you needed to speak Spanish, it doesn't matter to them if you're white, black, Asian, man, or woman. They need to know that you can speak Spanish. If they need to know that you can speak English, it's the same as well as French or any other language which maybe that position serves. They have a position that's open that they need to fill, and their candidate needs to meet those requirements. And in the case of military, and I'm not sure, many of you may have people who in your family are in the military. I do. I have not been in the military myself. My family, I've been through the process and watched the process of recruitment and everything else, and understand that quite well. And my family have been in the military. So, but you may have as well, and you may be also in the military active duty yourself, or reserve, or you may be a veteran. There's a process, and when you go in for recruitment, there's a whole screening process that goes on, and then further they go into physicals, and then they go into mental checks. The military is a job. It doesn't matter what branch you're in, okay? It doesn't matter what job you take. The military is a beast of its own in terms of requiring that its candidates, okay, meet a certain level of expectation. Now, this is the thing. Physical, mental, the ability, cognitive thinking skills, and your education, what you understand, even just through high school level. They need to know where you're at with your knowledge base. And so they do this really, really thorough examination of candidates, as they should. And as an equal opportunity employer, any equal opportunity employer, even if they didn't have these restrictions, okay, or, if you had this, you don't qualify to be get accepted in the military. Being trans or going in and then wanting surgery. Going into the military, when you're a man or a woman, it doesn't matter. You go in there and you get your testing. If you have a physical anomaly or you have a special circumstance where your body may be made in a certain way, and this may move to a point where little ears shouldn't hear, okay? But if you get to the point where, you're being checked and your genitalia is being checked and you have physical anomalies, they may or may not, depending on your psychological structure, deny you. They may see you completely sound. And you may pass and get through boot camp or, whatever criteria they need you to meet to get to the next steps, and then be working for the U.S. military in whatever branch, okay? But this is the thing. If you can't perform your job, your duties, okay, if your body and your mind are not intact in the position of being employed, I see no reason why any employer, this has nothing to do with gender, this does not have anything to do with sexual orientation, this does not have anything to do with race or preference. What this has to do with is with the ability for you to do your job and do it well. With your employer being able to count on you to do your job and do it well. There is no room in the military, be you at a desk or be there out there shooting or be there out there strategizing and having men under you or women under you, people under you, counting on you to keep them alive and safe. Be you inside of a ship or out in a building directing. I mean, it doesn't matter where you are. People are counting on you, okay? It's a network of people, and they cannot have weak links, period. Period. It does not have anything to do with the fact that you wear a dress and you're a man or you want to wear pants and you're a woman. It has nothing to do with who you're sleeping with or who's in your bed, period. The transgender issue has been completely blown out of proportion, and the expectation that an employer should hire you if for whatever reason that you're going to be put them in a position where they can't count on you emotionally because of hormone issues, because of psychological issues and ramifications having to do with gender confusion, that has no place in an environment, in a working environment such as the U.S. military, and many other military backgrounds and countries would agree in their own instances. It's not discriminatory. It's job, the ability to do one's job. And, I really hope there is a good clarification on that as far as the people are concerned. And hopefully people shed some light and truth on this and call it what it is. It's not discrimination. It's not about what you have, in terms of genitalia. It has to do with the ability to do one's job, do it well, being of sound body and mind. And in the case of these types of situations, they're very, very complex, and it just doesn't have the place in our military. Okay, and equality has, if you want to look at equality, it has nothing to do with it if you really want to look at the issue. Period, end of story. Okay, so I will go ahead and I'm going to put together, that's the end of our show tonight, I'm going to go ahead and put together those resources for you so you can read the information yourself. I'm hoping that you'll take just a few minutes and do so. And then also right now I'm going to give you that phone number like I do every time to Congress, so you can go ahead and give them a call. Their phone number is 202-224-3121. That's 202-224-3121, and you can get a hold of them on House.gov and Senate.gov. You can also look up other resources on my website, as you know, AaronCruz.com, or you can send emails and inquiries to info@AaronCruz.com. And please make sure you follow me on Twitter, if you're on there, at Wagner Girlie. That's WAGNERGIRLE. You can also follow Queen of Politics on there, or The Aaron Cruz Show. I don't usually tweet anything out too much on those. It's mainly for information about the show. As always, we want to grow together, find common solutions, find common ground. I'll answer any questions you have, okay? Any ones that I can. Don't ever hesitate to reach out. We are in this together, right? United we stand. So thank you for joining me tonight, Aaron Cruz, and the Queen of Politics and the Aaron Cruz Show. Join me again on Tuesday, okay, 7 to 8 p.m., Political Core, where we get to core the issues that matter to you with information you can use to make positive change in your community, in your state, and in the nation. I hope everybody has a blessed evening. God bless you, and God bless America.
To hear more and to learn more on how you can make an impact or about the Queen of Politics and the Aaron Cruz Show, visit us online at AaronCruz.com. That's ERINCRUZ.com. Thank you for joining us, and see you at the same time and the same place next week.